Think about this: if your peace of mind, your confidence, or your sense of self can be taken away by someone else leaving your life, then you don't own those things. They do. Independence is about reclaiming ownership over your emotional stability. It's about becoming the kind of person who adds value to your own life first, so that every relationship you have is a choice, not a crutch. People often say, "I'm just better in a relationship," or "I don't like being alone." But that tells me one thing: they haven't done the work of finding out who they are without someone else defining it for them. That's dangerous, because when you don't know how to be whole on your own, you'll stay in situations that shrink you just because they're familiar. You'll tolerate disrespect because it's less scary than being alone. You'll confuse connection with dependence. Let's flip the script. Independence doesn't mean isolation. It means that if someone leaves, your world doesn't collapse. It means you have the tools, emotional, practical, spiritual, to keep going, to keep growing, to rebuild if necessary. You're not starting from zero. Just because someone exited your life, you've built your own foundation. Here's what independence really looks like. It's learning to enjoy your own company. It's making decisions without needing constant reassurance. It's being able to process your feelings instead of needing someone else to tell you what they mean. It's pursuing your dreams with or without applause. It's standing up for your values, even if it costs you someone who doesn't share them. This kind of preparation isn't just useful during heartbreak. It's essential during life transitions, moving cities, changing careers, losing friendships. When you've trained yourself to handle life on your own terms, you don't live in fear of change. You don't cling, you choose. You stop settling for halfway love, fake friends, or jobs that drain your soul. Because you've proven to yourself, I can survive this. I can survive anything. So remember, independence isn't about being alone. It's about knowing you can be. That's not cold. That's powerful. It's not about being emotionally unavailable. It's about being emotionally prepared. Because the most attractive, most magnetic version of you is the one who doesn't need saving. Just someone who knows how to walk beside you, not carry you. And that kind of strength, that's not lonely. That's legendary. You are your most reliable safety net. This is one of the most grounding truths you can internalize in life. It's easy to believe that someone else will catch you when you fall. Your partner, your best friend, your family. And sometimes they do. But here's the uncomfortable reality. Not everyone will show up when you need them most. Not because they're bad people, but because they're human. They're busy with their own struggles. They're not always capable of carrying your emotional weight. That's why the person you must be able to rely on every single time is you. Being your own safety net means that no matter who walks away, no matter who lets you down, no matter what gets stripped from your life, you don't completely fall apart. It doesn't mean you don't grieve, or that you don't feel pain. It means that beneath the pain, you've built something solid. You've developed emotional habits that can hold you up. You've created a mindset that says, "This hurts, but it won't destroy me." That's what it means to have a safety net. The challenge is, we're often taught to outsource our strength. From a young age, we're conditioned to look for comfort outside ourselves. Call someone, text someone, lean on someone. And while connection is vital, it can't be your only strategy. Because what happens when the person you usually lean on isn't picking up the phone? What happens when the relationship you leaned on for security ends? If you've never learned to self-regulate, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you'll feel like you're in free fall. That's why being your own safety net isn't selfish. It's the most selfless thing you can do. When you know how to support yourself, you stop putting unrealistic expectations on the people around you. You stop draining your partner by needing them to fix your bad days. You stop testing your friend's loyalty every time you're insecure. You stop performing in social situations just to be accepted. Because deep down, you know, I've got me. I can hold myself through this. And that internal confidence doesn't just help in the hard times. It radiates in the good times. It makes you more stable, more attractive, more grounded. People can feel when you're not needy, not trying to be rescued. You're not playing the role of a victim. You're taking ownership. You're building a life where other people are the bonus, not the lifeline. So don't wait for someone else to catch you. Build the net. Strengthen the muscles. Learn to talk yourself down from fear. Learn to motivate yourself when no one's watching. Learn to be your own friend, your own coach, your own biggest supporter. Because the day you stop waiting for someone to save you is the day you become truly free. Relationships are an addition, not a necessity. This one truth can radically transform how you approach love, friendship, and connection. We grow up believing that being in a relationship is the goal, the prize, the sign that we've made it. Society sells us the idea that without someone by our side, romantically or socially, we're somehow incomplete. That's a lie. Relationships can enrich your life, but they should never define it. A healthy relationship should feel like an upgrade, not a rescue mission. If you treat a partner like a lifeline, you'll cling to them out of fear instead of choosing them from a place of strength. You'll ignore red flags, shrink yourself to fit their preferences, and make compromises that erode your self-respect, all because your happiness is tethered to keeping them around. That's not love. That's dependency dressed up as romance. When you treat relationships as an addition, you no longer approach them from a place of lack. You stop saying, I need someone, and start saying, I'm open to someone who adds to what I've already built. This shift changes everything. You become more discerning. You no longer pursue connection for the sake of escaping loneliness. Instead, you choose people who bring peace, alignment, and joy, not chaos disguised as passion. Think about this in terms of your life's foundation. If your self-esteem, peace of mind, and identity are all built on someone else's presence, then your foundation is unstable. The moment that person changes, withdraws, or leaves, your world collapses. But if you've built a life on your own values, passions, and purpose, then anyone who comes into your life is just adding furniture to a home that's already standing strong. And if they leave, sure, it'll sting, but the house won't fall down. This isn't about being cold or guarded. It's about honoring yourself enough not to confuse emotional oxygen with emotional addiction. You're allowed to desire connection. You're allowed to crave intimacy and closeness. But it becomes dangerous when that desire turns into neediness, when you believe you can't be okay without someone else. True freedom is knowing that your joy, your peace, and your future do not hinge on another person's ability to stay. When you know this, you give love from a whole place. You're not trying to fill a gap. You're sharing your overflow. You're not asking them to make you happy. You're inviting them to witness the happiness you've already cultivated. So start building a life so rich, so grounded, so fulfilling that any relationship is a bonus, not a band-aid. That whether someone walks in or walks out, your foundation stays the strong, self-sourced, and unshakable. Because you were never waiting to be completed. You were just waiting to be met at your level. Emotional self-reliance builds resilience. Life will challenge you. That's not a maybe. It's a guarantee. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall apart. Unexpected moments will shake your world. And in those times, your ability to bounce back, your resilience, doesn't come from who's around you. It comes from who you are on the inside. Emotional self-reliance is the foundation of that strength. It's the internal skill of calming yourself, encouraging yourself, and moving forward even when no one else is there to push you. Many people think emotional support only comes from outside, through a friend's advice, a partner's comfort, or someone validating your feelings. While those things can help, they're not always available. There will be days when no one picks up the phone. Days when people don't understand what you're going through. Days when you feel invisible in a crowded room. And if your only method of coping depends on others showing up, you're vulnerable. Not because people don't care, but because they're human. They won't always be there at the right time. Self-reliance means you've learned how to show up for yourself, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when it's hard. It's the quiet voice that says, this is painful, but I know how to handle this. It's choosing not to spiral into panic or self-pity because you've built inner tools, reflection, mindfulness, perspective, self-compassion. Emotional self-reliance is not the absence of emotion, it's the management of it. It's being able to feel deeply without being taken down completely. The more emotionally self-reliant you become, the more resilient you become. Because you stop seeing adversity as the end of the road. You start seeing it as something you can work through. You stop waiting for someone else to pick up your broken pieces and start learning how to put yourself back together. You don't fall apart just because things go wrong. You adjust. You adapt. You grow. That kind of power makes you unstoppable. It makes you less reactive in relationships. You don't lash out just to be heard, and you don't collapse when someone doesn't meet your emotional needs right away. You communicate. You breathe. You regroup. You become someone who can be leaned on because you've learned how to lean on yourself. And the beauty of emotional self-reliance is that it doesn't isolate you. In fact, it allows you to connect better, because when you're not emotionally needy, you stop trying to get from others what you already give to yourself. You love cleaner, without manipulation or pressure. You offer support without losing yourself in the process. So if you want to be stronger in love, stronger in life, stronger when life throws you curveballs, start building emotional self-reliance. Learn to be your own anchor in the storm. Because when you know how to steady yourself, no wave, no matter how big, can fully knock you down. Master solitude before you master connection. Before you can build healthy, lasting relationships with others, you need to build one with yourself. Most people rush into connection because they're uncomfortable with being alone. They use relationships as a way to escape their own silence, their own thoughts, their own emptiness. But here's the truth. If you can't stand being alone with yourself, you'll never show up fully in a relationship. You'll either hide parts of who you are or expect someone else to fill in the pieces you've ignored. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's presence. It's the practice of learning how to be with yourself, not just when everything is going well, but especially when it's not. It's where you get to listen to your thoughts without distraction, reflect without input, and understand what you really want, outside of the noise, the validation, or the pressure to please. In solitude, you begin to uncover the difference between what you've been taught to want and what you truly value. That's where clarity starts. When you master solitude, you stop bringing desperation into your connections. You don't meet someone and immediately ask, "Will you complete me?" Instead, you ask, "Do you complement the life I already love?" That shift is everything. Because if you're not okay being alone, you'll accept anyone who makes the silence go away, even if they're wrong for you. You'll mistake attention for affection. You'll confuse chemistry for compatibility. You'll overlook red flags just to avoid being by yourself again. Solitude teaches you patience. It trains you to not settle just because someone shows up. It allows you to build standards based on truth rather than fear. You become more intentional. You're not dating out of boredom or attaching to someone just because they seem interested. You're choosing based on alignment, not anxiety. It also gives you emotional stability. When you're grounded in your own company, you're not shaken every time someone pulls away. You're not constantly checking your phone, overthinking texts, or fearing abandonment. You know that no matter what someone else does, you're still standing. You're not emotionally bankrupt, waiting for someone else to deposit validation. You're already full. Even in friendships and family dynamics, mastering solitude changes the game. You stop people pleasing to keep people around. You stop chasing connection from a place of lack. Instead, you start showing up with honesty, presence, and strength. You give because you want to, not because you're afraid of losing love. So before you seek deep connection with someone else, spend time building that depth within yourself. Learn to enjoy your own space. Get curious about your own thoughts. Heal your wounds. Discover your passions. When you master solitude, connection becomes a choice, not a survival strategy. And that's when relationships stop being something you need and start becoming something beautiful you get to share. Self-worth shouldn't be outsourced. Too often, we hand our sense of value to the people around us. We let others become the mirror through which we see ourselves. A compliment lifts us. A criticism crushes us. A response, or the lack of one, dictates whether we feel good enough that day. But the moment your self-worth depends on external validation, you've given away your power. You've made your confidence conditional, fragile, and completely dependent on something you can't control, someone else's opinion. Think about how often we do this without realizing. You post something online. How many likes will determine how you feel? You wear a new outfit. Someone noticing or not decides if it was worth it. You open up emotionally. Whether someone accepts or rejects it tells you how lovable you are. This kind of pattern is exhausting. It keeps you constantly adjusting who you are, trying to measure up, trying to be enough in someone else's eyes, just so you can feel okay in your own skin. But the truth is, nobody can give you your worth. They can recognize it, appreciate it, reflect it, but they cannot create it. That's your job. Self-worth is something you build by keeping promises to yourself, by setting boundaries and respecting them, by showing up for yourself in the dark moments, not just the bright ones. It's what you cultivate when you choose self-respect over people, pleasing, when you say no to things that don't align, and when you stop trying to earn love through performance. When you stop outsourcing your worth, everything changes. You no longer tolerate disrespect just because you're afraid of being alone. You don't chase people who are undecided about you. You don't lower your standards just to be chosen. Why? Because you've already chosen yourself. You've already decided you're valuable. Not because someone said so, but because you know so. That kind of self-worth brings peace. It silences the noise of needing constant reassurance. You don't panic when someone pulls away or criticizes you, because you're not building your identity on their approval. You've built it on something deeper, the understanding that your value is inherent, not assigned. And this doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you grounded. You can receive feedback without falling apart. You can be open to connection without clinging. You can love someone deeply without needing them to constantly remind you that you matter. You bring confidence into your relationships, not insecurity. So ask yourself honestly, who have you given the pen to when it comes to writing your worth? Who are you waiting on to tell you that you're enough? And what if you stop waiting? What if, starting today, you reclaimed that power and decided that your value isn't a question? It's a fact. Because when your self-worth comes from within, nobody can take it away. And that's when you stop living for approval and start living with freedom. The ability to walk away is your greatest power. There's a moment in everyone's life when they face a difficult decision, to stay in something that's no longer right for them or to walk away and stand on their own. Could be a relationship, a job, a friendship, or even a pattern of behavior. And in that moment, the fear of walking away can feel paralyzing. But here's the truth. The moment you realize you can leave, that you are willing to walk if something violates your peace, your worth, or your growth, that's the moment you become powerful. Most people stay far too long in situations that no longer serve them. Not because they don't see the red flags, but because they don't trust themselves to survive without what they've known. They fear the unknown more than they fear the slow damage being done to them by staying. They think, what if I walk away and regret it? What if I never find something better? What if being alone is worse? These fears keep people stuck in places that shrink them. But you don't grow by staying small. You grow by honoring your boundaries. And sometimes the only way to do that is to walk away. Not out of bitterness, not to make a statement, but because you've finally accepted that your peace is more valuable than anyone's presence. Walking away isn't about giving up. It's about choosing yourself. It's not easy. It takes courage to leave something familiar. It takes strength to risk discomfort for the sake of alignment. But the moment you show yourself that you can walk away from something that's not right, you build an unshakable sense of self-trust. You teach yourself that you are not trapped. You prove that your value doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing wisely. This applies to more than just people. You need the power to walk away from patterns too, from self-doubt, from procrastination, from negative self-talk. Every time you choose to leave behind something that no longer supports your growth, you step into your power. You stop living reactively and start living intentionally. The ability to walk away creates space for what's meant for you. As long as you're clinging to what's draining you, you're not available for what could fulfill you. It's like holding on to a closed door and wondering why new opportunities aren't coming in. Let go. Let space be uncomfortable for a while. Let silence teach you what noise never could. And remember, walking away isn't something you need to do loudly. It's not always a dramatic exit. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just choosing to stop explaining yourself. Sometimes it's choosing to stop texting first. Sometimes it's choosing not to tolerate what you've outgrown. But in all its forms, walking away is a statement to yourself, I deserve more. I trust myself to find it. And I'd rather stand alone in truth than stay connected through compromise. That's not weakness, that's power. Independence is the root of self-respect. When you know how to stand on your own, you carry yourself differently. You speak with more clarity. You move with more intention. You don't have to beg for permission or approval to follow your path. And that quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself, comes from knowing that you are capable of living life on your own terms. Independence isn't just about being financially self-sufficient or making decisions without help. It's a mindset. It's the inner belief that you are enough as you are, and that you have the strength to face whatever comes next, even if you have to do it alone. That belief is the foundation of self-respect. Because when you truly respect yourself, you stop tolerating environments, relationships, and patterns that don't honor your value. And independence gives you the freedom to leave those situations when they show up. People often confuse independence with isolation. But true independence doesn't mean pushing everyone away. It means you don't need anyone to complete you. You choose connection. You appreciate support, but your well-being isn't dependent on it. You're not constantly chasing someone to fix your loneliness, solve your problems, or give your life meaning. That responsibility belongs to you. And when you own it, you stop sacrificing your self-worth just to belong. Think about how many compromises are made out of dependence. Staying in toxic relationships because you fear being alone. Silencing your voice at work because you're afraid to rock the boat. Bending your boundaries because you think you'll lose love if you stand firm. None of these come from strength. They come from fear. But when you build your independence, fear starts losing its grip. You begin to realize that needing less from others doesn't make you cold. It makes you powerful. Independent people carry a certain energy. They're grounded. They're consistent. They're not easily swayed by trends, opinions, or rejection. And that kind of presence is magnetic. Not because it's loud, but because it's real. You don't need to prove yourself when you know yourself. You don't need to chase when you trust that the right things are attracted to your authenticity. That doesn't mean you never struggle. Being independent doesn't make life perfect. It just means you're better equipped to face the hard days without falling apart. You've built inner systems. You've created emotional tools. You've learned how to self-soothe, how to make clear decisions, how to stay aligned with your values even when pressure mounts. So if you want to elevate your self-respect, don't start by demanding more from others. Start by demanding more from yourself. Ask, am I living in a way that shows I have my own back? Am I making decisions based on fear or freedom? Am I willing to walk the path alone if it means staying true to who I am? Because once you build that inner independence, everything changes. You stop settling. You stop chasing. And you start rising, not because someone gave you permission, but because you finally gave it to yourself. Boundaries teach people how to treat you. You show people how to value you by what you allow, what you accept, and what you reinforce. If you constantly make yourself available at the expense of your own well-being, if you say "es" when you mean no, if you tolerate disrespect in silence, you're sending a message, even if unintentionally. You're teaching others that your time, energy, and emotions are negotiable. And the longer you do that, the harder it becomes to reclaim your space without conflict. Boundaries are not walls. They're not ultimatums. They're not punishments. They are expressions of self-respect. A boundary is simply you saying, this is where I end and you begin. Here is what I will and will not accept in my life. And when you communicate those lines clearly, calmly, and consistently, you change not just how people engage with you, but how you engage with the world. People often fear setting boundaries because they associate it with confrontation or rejection. They think, if I draw this line, I'll lose the relationship. But if a connection only survives because you're constantly compromising your needs, that's not a healthy relationship. It's an emotional negotiation. Real connection grows when both people feel safe, seen, and respected. And boundaries create that structure. They aren't barriers to love. They are the container that protects love from turning into obligation. When you have no boundaries, you live in a state of emotional exhaustion. You overgive. You overexplain. You say yes out of guilt instead of desire. And little by little, you become resentful, not just of others, but of yourself. Because deep down, you know you've abandoned your own needs in the name of keeping the peace. But peace that costs you your dignity is not peace. It's quiet suffering. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. It's how you preserve your energy, your integrity, and your emotional availability. When you create clear limits, you make room for healthier dynamics. You stop attracting people who want to use you and start aligning with those who value mutual respect. The more consistent you are with your boundaries, the more natural they become. People will begin to recognize where you stand, and more importantly, they will start adjusting to meet you there, or they'll fall away. And that's okay. Boundaries reveal who is meant to be in your life, not just who's willing to take from it. But here's the key: boundaries are something you must first hold with yourself. If you say you won't answer work messages after 8 p.m., but constantly do, if you say you'll leave a toxic situation and keep staying, you're training yourself to ignore your own limits. Self-respect starts with self-discipline. So the next time you hesitate to express a boundary, ask yourself, am I protecting the relationship or am I protecting my peace? Because when you choose the latter, you're not just setting a limit, you're setting a standard. And people will treat you according to the standard you uphold, not the one you hope for. Being alone teaches you how to be your own best company. Solitude can be uncomfortable, especially in a world that glorifies constant connection and external validation. But learning to be alone without feeling lonely is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. When you're comfortable in your own company, you create a sanctuary within yourself that no one else can disturb or take away. This internal peace becomes a refuge in times of chaos and uncertainty. Being alone isn't about isolation or withdrawal. It's about intentional presence with yourself. It's the ability to sit with your thoughts, emotions, and desires without distraction or avoidance. In that space, you start to understand who you really are beneath the layers of social roles, expectations, and noise. You discover your likes, dislikes, dreams, fears, and values more clearly. This self-awareness is the foundation for authentic living. When you rely on others for entertainment, emotional support, or validation, you risk losing your sense of identity whenever those people aren't around. But when you cultivate the ability to enjoy your own company, you become less reactive and more centered. You don't need a partner, friend, or social group to fill a void. Instead, you fill that void yourself with self-love, curiosity, and growth. This doesn't mean you don't value connection. It means you value yourself enough to not use connection as a crutch. You can seek companionship from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. You're not afraid of being alone because you've learned that your relationship with yourself is the most important one you will ever have. Moreover, being your own best company helps you develop emotional independence. You learn how to soothe yourself when you're anxious, motivate yourself when you're stuck, and celebrate yourself when you succeed. These are skills that make you stronger, more resilient, and less dependent on external circumstances for happiness. The ability to enjoy solitude also sharpens your intuition. When you're not constantly distracted by others' opinions or noise, you can hear your inner voice more clearly. This helps you make better decisions, set healthier boundaries, and pursue goals that truly align with your authentic self. Lastly, learning to be alone teaches you patience and presence. In a culture of instant gratification, solitude invites you to slow down and be with yourself fully. It encourages mindfulness and appreciation of the present moment rather than always rushing to the next thing or person. In sum, being alone is not a state to fear but a skill to master. It's a gift that empowers you to live a fuller, richer life. When you become your own best company, you create a foundation of self-love and strength that allows you to engage with the world and others from a place of true wholeness, not neediness. That is freedom. To wrap this all up, being ready to survive alone isn't about isolation or bitterness, it's about empowerment. It's about building a foundation so strong within yourself that no matter what life throws your way, you remain unshaken. When you cultivate emotional self-reliance, master solitude, and own your self-worth, you're no longer dependent on others to define your value or happiness. You learn to set boundaries that protect your peace, to walk away from what no longer serves you, and to stand confidently on your own. Independence isn't just freedom, it's the root of respect, resilience, and true connection. By becoming your own best company, you don't just survive alone. And from that place of strength, you show up in every relationship, every opportunity, and every challenge with clarity, confidence, and peace. Remember, the most powerful relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. So invest in that, protect it fiercely, and always be ready to stand tall, alone, whole, and unstoppable.